Welcome in. How's it going tonight, Nathan? Great to see you, man.
Hey, how you doing? I'm doing really well.
Well, everybody, we got a good crowd watching so far. 15's not too bad from the start. I had some people expressing interest, man, because I know in the alt sports or alt football community, SlamBall is pretty popular. So appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Forward to sharing a little bit about it.
So we have Nathan Karsjens here. He was a former tight end and long snapper at Western Illinois University. Pretty successful career there. Pretty athletic guy. But here recently, as of this year, you were playing for the SlamBall Slashers as a stopper. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Everything correct.
Good deal. I had to really work on those details. I had to make
sure. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yes, sir. I know those are two completely different sports, but man, you have to be athletic to play SlamBall. There is no way around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being a tight end, man, you're a pretty big dude, 6'5", 250. I mean, that's good size. Do you feel like you were a larger SlamBall athlete compared to others?
I mean, I definitely was larger than everyone else weight-wise. Everyone else in the league, I would say, was average, like my height. You know, you wouldn't see anybody really much taller, just because of the trampolines. And I think if you were a little bit bigger, your joints would take a little bit more of a beating. And so I think 6'5", 6'6" was kind of the max for, height at least. But I definitely was one of the heavier guys. Most of the guys were probably a little over 200, 210, 220 pounds. And so I definitely was. I had a little bit more weight than everybody else, which was nice.
Understood. Now we'll talk more about your SlamBall career in itself here in a minute, but I really wanted to highlight football since this is a football show.
Yep.
I find that doing this show, I really like to give people like yourself a platform, a voice to speak, get some eyes on you. I know you are hoping to return to the football field in the future. Is that correct?
Yes, very much so.
Understood. So let's talk a little bit about football, and then we'll get back to the SlamBall topic. Just want to ask you, man, tell me more about your background, where you come from, where are you calling in from tonight?
So I'm calling in from Macomb, Illinois, where Western Illinois is based out of. I still have one more year grad school, and so I'm working through that. Been working on that since I think my first semester of grad school was the summer before my final season, and so about a year ago. And so I'm finishing up my second year with that. But other than that, I'm from a really small town in Iowa. Ackley, Iowa is the name of it. If anyone's familiar with Iowa, it's along Highway 20. It's about 30 minutes west of Cedar Falls, Waterloo. So kind of where UNI is located. So it really kind of is in the middle of nowhere. With sports growing up, both my parents were coaches, and both my older siblings played sports. Especially my older brother, who played sports and played football in college. And so at a young age, I can remember going to college football games, going to his high school football games, and just being, dumbfounded and how awesome and fun it looked to be out there. And so I think deep down, I knew that college football was where I was going to be heading at some point. I don't think I knew it really on the surface level. I don't think I knew it, but I think deep down, I kind of, ever since I was a young age, I realized that was kind of what I wanted to do and what the trajectory of my life was going to go. Growing up, middle school, I really took the basketball to heart, the basketball kick to heart. I was a little bit taller than everybody else. Junior high, I was probably around 6'2", around my 8th grade year. And so that's, it's relatively tall for an 8th grader. And then going into my freshman year, I was closer to 6'4", and then I kind of rounded out to 6'5", the next couple of years. But basketball was huge in my life. I think that's kind of how my transition to SlamBall was pretty successful, because I had that basketball skill and background. But I played all 4 sports in high school.
Wow.
In Iowa, they play baseball in the summer. That's a kind of a big thing that's different from Illinois. I know a lot of my friends in Illinois, they kind of squint at me like, "Oh, you dual sported at some time?" And I said, "No. In Iowa, we play football in the fall, basketball in the winter, track and field in the spring, and then baseball in the summer." And so
wow,
it gives us.
It's a busy year, bro.
Yeah. And so it kind of gives us that ability to play all 4 sports. But yeah, like you said, each sport is either overlapped by a week, or you have maybe a week break between sports. But I think that was kind of what I liked, and I like to stay busy and coming from a small town, it was, there's not like there was much else to do anyway. And so being involved, whether it was, I only played baseball my junior and senior year, but my previous years in the summer, I was playing AU basketball. And so that, either way, I was doing something year round, whether it be, obviously organized sports with my high school, or it was AU in the summer. And so that was relatively my high school experience. Regarding like accolades, I was an all-state discus, or I was state champion in discus when I was in high school. I got runner-up in discus my junior year, and then I got third place in shot put my senior year. And so that was that for track. And then basketball, I think my senior year I was like second team all-state 1A, which is the smallest or like the lowest level. And then I had other, all conference honors in basketball. I scored close to 1,300 points. I think I scored 1,299. So I was 1 point off 1,300. Had close to 800 or maybe even 900 rebounds in my high school career as well. And then with football, which is, kind of really strange. I was an all-state football player, but I was an all-state punter twice or 3 times, I think. They were with different, like the Iowa Newspaper Association, and then one was the Des Moines Register. But whenever I got an all-state honor for football, it was because I was a punter. It wasn't because of I was, a great quarterback or, great tight end or a great defensive player. It was because I was a good punter. And so that's kind of a funny kind of accolade I get to say. I was an all-state player, but at the same time I was an all-state punter. And so, whether that has as much weight or merit, that's kind of up for you to decide.
Understood. So coming out of school, I mean, seeing as your parents were coaches, I was a coach at one time. I mean, you must have really had sports instilled in your veins there. I mean, I feel like.
Yep. Absolutely. I can remember, if after school I would obviously come back, because they were both teachers as well. And so I would come back to their room, whether they were, teaching in the elementary or middle school or high school. I would go back to their room, and more than likely they wouldn't be there. They would be out at practice, coaching. And so if I wasn't just playing in my parents' room, after school, I would be sitting around at the basketball. I remember my dad was a high school girls basketball coach. And so from, like I said, as young as I can remember just kind of shooting hoops on the side basket. And, all the girls thought I was a really cute kid. And I think, I think I grew out of that cuteness relatively quickly as I hit puberty. I'm sure some people will say that as well. But, that was a plus, high school girls come up to me. Oh, you're such a cute little, that was good with me. And so, maybe I did that because of the girls. Maybe I just liked being around sports. But yeah, like you said, both my parents kind of, that athletic gene was instilled into me, not only, as a coach, but, as they were both respectively good athletes as well in their day. So it was kind of something that was just a family, thing. In my family, it's teaching and sports are kind of the two staples. Both my parents are teachers. My older brother's a teacher. My older sister's a teacher. And then they all were, involved in sports as well. And so that's kind of the two staples, I guess you could say, of my family.
Understood. Much respect to your parents. I know I was a teacher and a coach for quite a while, in my opinion. And it's a tough gig, man. Much respect to them, and then much respect to them for raising you correctly, and putting that in you. Because I mean, a lot of the people that have these failed lives or aren't doing very well, I mean, they don't have those qualities. They don't have that background. They don't have, so I get it. And when you're living in a small town, especially, you need that, because it's real easy to get in trouble or do something you're not supposed to.
Yep. Oh yeah. I know that too well.
Understood. Yep. So getting to know more about you, that's awesome, dude. I didn't realize that you had that big of athletic background, but it does make sense seeing as you're playing SlamBall now and just played football in 2022, So can I ask you, before we move on, in terms of the SlamBall, are you still on the SlamBall team currently on the roster?
That's kind of some gray area right now.
Understood.
I know they had mentioned that, they'd see me again next summer. And so they're, I'm looking forward to going back again next summer. So like, that's for sure a thing.
Cool.
Whether the teams are going to be the same, whether the format's going to be the same, that's kind of up in the air right now. But I do know for sure that I'll be back next summer. Cool. And I'll be playing for SlamBall, at least, whether it's for the Slashers or another team or, whatever it may be. But I think for sure I'll be back next summer. So that's all I really know for sure right now.
I understand. I just had to ask. I didn't want to like imply or say things
Yeah.
that, and to make it sound like you are, and then people watching thinking you are and you aren't.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's why I asked for sure. And we'll get, like I said, we'll get back on the actual SlamBall, but I had to ask that question quickly. So that's your background. Describe your time playing like tight end, long snapper at Western Illinois. I mean, I'm going to play a clip in the background while you talk. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
All right.
No, that was first and foremost. I thank Western for allowing me to come play football there and being able to do so for 6 years. Not a lot of people can say, one, they played college football for 6 years, and two, be able to do it all at the same place, especially nowadays. A lot of guys play somewhere for a year or two and they move on to somewhere else or transfer just so they can play more. But I felt like Western was a home since day one. So getting recruited to play there it was late in my senior year. It was after my senior year of football. It was during my senior year of basketball. They kind of called me one night and they talked to me about coming to visits and coming to visit me in basketball practice and all that kind of stuff. And so I took some visits there, and it was a small town. I felt very comfortable there, coming from a smaller town in Iowa. And so I felt, and the coaches all seemed to care a lot, not only about me as a player, but me as a person, and just showed those aspects to me. So that's what kind of brought me to Western. Um, when I first got to Western in 2017, they're a really good team. They had a lot of depth at the tight end position. They used a lot of tight ends in a lot of different way. And so while I was a little discouraged not being able to play that first initial year, I knew that my work was going to be cut out for me, in the fact that they were going to use tight ends, and they were going to use them a lot. And then that's kind of how my career progressed. My first couple of years at Western were probably a little bit less, a little bit, not as successful as maybe I wanted them to be, especially the tight end position, and what I'd seen my true freshman year. I saw tight ends making a lot of plays, playing a lot of snaps. And so, I was a little discouraged that first couple of years. And I think a big part of it too was that transition from 1A football, where I was always bigger. I was, somewhat faster than everybody else. I weighed more than everybody else. I kind of could just bully everyone.
Yep.
Coming to the Missouri Valley Conference, which is, one of the best conferences in college football, at least the best in the FCS. And so, the physicality that it took to play at that level, especially the tight end playing in the trenches against, all American defensive linemen week in and week out, that was something I kind of had to learn the hard way. And it kind of took me a little bit longer to develop into that kind of skill set. But no, I think everything happened for a reason, and I developed into the player that I was the last couple of years. Obviously, with the COVID season, playing 6 games, I think in 2020 or early, 2021, that was definitely an experience. Being a college athlete during COVID is, I'm sure people will be talking about that for a long time. But
Yep.
especially in the Missouri Valley, where we played our spring season and then turned around and played our fall season. Um, I was relatively happy with how the spring season went. Was really looking forward to the fall season. As a tight end, I didn't play it up to my ability. I feel like that next fall season, 2021, and um, and then obviously with the coaching change after that, and then coming into my final year, 2022, I kind of wrestled with that decision of whether or not to stay or whether or not to transfer out. Because with the new coach, especially being my last year, I wanted to make sure it was good. And I just knew deep down that staying at Western was my best opportunity, my best choice, and I think it ended up going well for me. So at tight end, that was a big kind of, that's how my career progressed. I feel like I could have made a much more impact earlier if I had learned just simple things and kind of had realized what it took, just work ethic wise. But the last couple of years, I feel like I did the best that I could with the opportunities I was given, obviously. And then with long snapper, that's a little bit of a different story. I think it was around, maybe it was the year before the COVID season, and so it might have been fall of 2019, or maybe it was spring of 2020. It was one of the two. We were out at spring practice, and we had just graduated a long snapper who was really good, and we didn't really have a new transfer long snapper coming in yet, at least for the spring practices and the spring semester. And so the coaches were just like, okay, has anyone ever long snap before? And me, never having long snap before, I had been an all-state punter, and so But I remember going to some camp when I was 10 years old, and they took 5 minutes and be like, "Hey, this is how you snap." Like it was just randomly, they did it at a camp one time. And I was like, well, I've done it before, obviously not implying how much or how well I'd done it before. They're like, okay, you can give it a shot. And so I ended up being not terrible at it. And so I did it for majority of that. I was a scout team kind of long snapper for that spring season. And then the next year or two, we had an older tight end at that point who kind of said the same thing and kind of had actually done it before. And so he was the guy, my, second and third to last year, before my senior year. My senior year was the only year that or my final year, my graduate year, whatever you want to call it, was the only year that I actually was the long snapper, the starting long snapper.
Understood.
And so that, I think that was a little bit tricky. I think a big part of that was because the new coaching staff came in and our special teams coordinator was the tight ends coach. And so he very early on was like, oh, he didn't really even know who had snapped before. I think he might have seen some of my, practice snaps, I guess, because I wasn't really getting any game snaps. And he was like, yeah, you got potential. Let's continue to work at it. And I took a really big leap. I feel like once that new coaching staff came in that spring and into the fall, just not necessarily with my technique, but just confidence with long snapping, especially at tight end. It kind of carried over to tight end as well. But I think that was big for my confidence, being able to know that I was going to be out there, for at least punt. And then, I did kick return and other kind of special teams, but kind of I allowed that long snapping and tight end to kind of piggyback off each other. Having a good snap, having a good cover rep, have a good tackle even. I hadn't tackled live in 5 or 6 years. Obviously, I played both ways in high school, but I hadn't like really tackled a person at the collegiate level yet, and so that was kind of a trial by fire, and it ended up going really well. I think I led the team in special teams tackles.
Awesome.
I think I had around 6, and so and our punt coverage team was also one of the best in the nation. I think, or what I can remember, we only averaged a couple yards, if that, maybe even negative yards on returns. And so I think a big part of that was, one, I had a relatively quick get off for my snaps and kind of release. And I think a lot of people just didn't want, maybe even not respect me as much as a long snapper. They're like, oh, it's just, it's a tight end. He played before, he's relatively athletic, but we're not going to worry about covering him. And no one really ever did cover me. And so if I didn't make the tackle initially, I was going to push a guy to the, the boundary or the sideline, and, my other guys were going to make that tackle. And I think that's kind of was a big part of why our cover unit was such a good, had such a good dynamic, is because, one, people just let me go free. And if I didn't make the tackle initially, I was going to push it to one of my teammates. And so that was, that's kind of both my tight end career and long snapping, both of them. And it's both, even my whole entire athletic career up to this point, it feels like a lot of it's just kind of last minute decisions that are made and they go really well. And so that was kind of how it was with going to Western, obviously playing tight end a little bit, kind of just pushing me in my second, third year, doing relatively well that spring season. And then same thing with long snapping, going in, not really having any game experience in high school or college at long snapping, but they trusted me enough to go and do it. And it ended up going really well. And so for whatever reason, that kind of just how my athletic or trajectory has gone. So that's both, and me as a tight end and me as a long snapper at Western Illinois.
Understood. Now, if you could go back to one right now, would it be long snapping or tight end if you had to choose?
I think right now it would definitely be tight end. Just, not to say that I don't respect the position of long snapper, but if I have the skills and if I have the ability to play tight end, that's what I would choose to do. Just
Agreed.
Because it seems, not to say it seems more important, but it just seems like there's a little bit more dynamic to it. I feel like it would suit my athletic ability better, being able to run, hit people, catch, all that kind of things. I feel like that's, that uses my skill set or utilizes my skill set so much more than if I was just a long snapper. But then at the end of the day, if long snapping is my only opportunity, I'm going to take that as well. That doesn't mean that I'm only looking to play tight end right now. I'm definitely looking to do both. That's kind of what my goal, if I can do both at the XFL or USFL level, that'd be awesome, because, it isn't necessarily the NFL yet. It's kind of that skill set. It's kind of that developmental league, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Is what a lot of people are calling it. And so If I can do both, that'd be awesome. If I can only do, I feel like if I do one and only one, it would be long snapper. But if I go somewhere to play tight end, I feel like I'm at least going to be a backup long snapper, or I'm going to, do both, because I do have that skill set. And I feel like, with limited rosters in football, with that, the roster count coming into play, if I make that position as a tight end, I feel like at least I'll be a backup, if not, having me do some stuff at long snapper. So.
Yeah, you're correct about that assumption. Just from talking to like the arena guys I've talked to, having that extra skill set goes a long way. It makes you a lot more valuable as a player. Yep. And so you're totally correct. And the motivation is to play, whether it's tight end or that. So I see what you're wanting here. I mean,
absolutely.
So that's awesome, dude. Your work ethic is evident. I mean, and you said that you came from a small town going to a college. I definitely can attest with you on that. And I have experience with that.
Yeah.
Because I played in a small school. I was all state as well. I was an offensive guard. I mean, in high school, I think I was 5'10", 260. I mean, nothing special.
Okay. Yeah.
But you go to check out some college stuff, and it's a whole nother world of athleticism.
Absolutely.
You don't even understand coming from the area. I didn't until I actually put a face on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, you worked your way up, dude. And that's what coaches want. They don't want somebody that's just going to be a spoiled brat. They want someone that's going to work. Yep. And that's exactly what you just said. So that's awesome, bro. I guess we'll move on from football. I mean, I'll ask you another couple questions towards the end about football, but considering your sport right now is SlamBall, I really want to cover that. We've got some people here that are wanting to hear about it. So let's roll on to the SlamBall game. Tell me this. If you had to explain SlamBall to someone, how would you explain it best? I mean, tell us more about the game and just a basic overview of how it works.
So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a combination of hockey. Imagine you go to a hockey game. Okay. So the arena, the people around you, the excitement, the people banging on the glass, that's the first aspect of SlamBall. And so the arena, the kind of environment in the room is going to be hockey. With the glass, there's glass all the way around the entire, entire place, people slapping on the glass. So that's a big hockey part of the game. Football comes in aspect when it comes to, the physicality of it. I think the rules in SlamBall are when you're on the hardwood, when you're dribbling, when, you're doing anything on the wooded area, it's football rules. You can, tackle them, you can hit them as hard as you can, shoulder, we're padded up pretty decently. It's not like, we're not wearing full pads or anything, but we're padded up somewhat. And so that physicality is definitely where the football aspect comes into play, where guys just, fully just dive into the shoulder of someone, hitting them into the wall. So that's kind of where that hockey. So it's the physicality is that hockey football mixture as well, checking guys, that kind of thing. That's where that football hockey physicality comes into play. But then skills, even in the trampolines is kind of even separate as well, but the skill, everything, the sport that you're watching is basketball. And so everything to do with the basketball, ball handling, shot making, passing, that's all basketball skill. And so a lot of the guys were, semi-pro basketball players. There were a handful of football guys like me who had a large amount of basketball skill. And then, there was even some guys who were, track athletes because they were just really good at jumping. And so that's where the basketball is that's where the skill aspect of the game is, being able to read a guy, being able to play defense, all that's basketball. And then the trampolines are just just a whole nother beast, a whole nother, not even really I can compare it to anything else. The trampolines are all Olympic level trampolines. And so if you were to watch the Olympics, you were to watch gymnastics and the trampoline event and gymnastics, that's what the same trampolines that we're using. And so that takes a while to learn the skill set of that. No one necessarily has that going into it. Obviously all the guys are very athletic. Obviously all the guys have sport experience, but at the same time, no one really has that basketball, or, maybe there is a gene where you know how to control your body well enough. Maybe that's a basketball thing. Maybe it's a football thing. Maybe it's just, general athleticism. all around. But the trampoline is the biggest part, in which I think a lot of people don't really think of. They just see the people flying in the air, but that's the biggest and most difficult part to kind of get your mind around. Not being afraid of being 15, 20 feet in the air, and then not knowing if you're going to land on your feet, land on your back, how to land safely. Like, that's just a whole different aspect of the game. But from the consumer side, it's just the physicality of hockey and football, the arena of hockey, but then all the skill sets and all the things you love about basketball as well. So that'd be the best way I could, kind of describe it.
Makes sense, totally. And it you have more insight on it than I ever could, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone asked me, I'm talking, we're playing basketball and trampolines. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
That's relatively an easy way to, and that you're not wrong either. It is basketball and trampolines, but I think what that doesn't highlight is the physicality of it, because
Agreed.
people are going to try to take your head off, and especially colliding in the air. I don't think, after my games, it honestly felt like, when we did play back to back, after that back to back game, it did feel like I played a football game, just because there was so much contact over that, however many minutes we were out there. And so the physicality is definitely there. You might not feel it initially, but you definitely have that similar feeling of, wow, I just played a very much contact sport. So
I mean, you're throwing your body weight around there, man. I mean, that's a lot of gravity going up and down.
Yeah,
You gotta feel that. No way around it. And you talked about you wearing pads. Are you wearing just like some small shoulder pads also, or is it just a helmet and like elbow pads?
It's more of like an undershirt, like you would wear under pads. And so,
Okay.
like when I was in high school, I wore like the quarterback shirt,
Yep.
where it was padded on the shoulders and ribs. It's very similar to that. The pads are maybe a little thicker, just, obviously, because we're not wearing anything on top of that. You see a lot of guys, we wear our uniform, we wear our tops, we wear our bottoms, but then under the tops, everyone's kind of wearing the same protective shirt, padded shirt. And then those helmets as well. Every team had a different color helmet, but they're all just soft padding as well. That was more of a safety issue. I don't think a lot of guys hit their head very often. I think that's just to make sure that no one really hurts themselves too bad.
Yeah.
And then, like any extra padding you wanted to wear, like I knew some guys wore girdles, some guys wore, knee pads. We all had knee braces and knee pads. We all had ankle braces, that whole kind of thing. So that was definitely a part of the game as well, just knowing the toll it was going to take on your joints over time. Because, while it does look cool and you are, 20 feet in the air, 15 feet in the air, you're still making contact. You're still going to land awkwardly sometimes. And so being protected, at least the lower body joints, that was a big part of it too as well.
Yes, sir. I can't imagine, sir. Much respect to you. I'm not even jumping on a trampoline at all at this point in my life. So much respect to you. I feel like I'll break a bone just jumping up and down on the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Let's skip around a little bit. I got more questions for you, but since you're already talking about it, I mean, tell me, what is the biggest differences in playing SlamBall compared to football, in your opinion?
I think initially it was just the conditioning level. I hadn't played basketball in 6, 7 years. Up to that point, I had been training for football, but my level of training was doing sprints, recovering 1 to 2 minutes in between my sprints, because I was trying to be as fast as I could. I wasn't trying to run sprints consecutively or trying to run a mile in a certain amount of time. I was trying to be as explosive as I could be.
Yes, sir.
And having that endurance level and then being explosive, those aren't necessarily you can't really train those at the same time. They kind of, one has to come before the other, or one has to come following the other. And so with the comparisons, the physicality is definitely there. You definitely feel the physicality. Maybe it's not as much hits to your head. That's a big, football, obviously you're playing with your head, you're playing with the helmets. You don't really feel that as much. It's a lot more, arms, legs. I think a big part of it is legs, unless you're running the ball, unless I caught a lot of passes, or I was getting tackled a bunch, my legs weren't really getting taxed regarding hits. But I felt like in SlamBall, dudes were going to be landing on you. Dudes were going to be hitting you in the legs, in midair. Sometimes you beat a guy, and so he's, way below you. And so he might hit your leg with his hand, coming across, just trying to make a basket. And so the bruises, I feel like on the lower extremities was a big part. Bruises on just your body in general. was definitely a big difference, I feel like, with SlamBall. But and obviously the conditioning level was very much different as well as SlamBall. I kind of had to transition relatively quick with my conditioning. I kind of came into the whole SlamBall thing very late. Um, I kind of showed up with about 2 to 3 weeks left of the training before the even season started. A lot of the guys had been there for like a month and a half. And
Gotcha.
so even if they had not already been in their like the correct shape, I feel like they just had a lot more time to adjust because like I said, the trampolines, you know, jumping or going from trampoline to hardwood and back and back and forth, like that's its whole other level of conditioning. There's no amount of running, no amount of, doing any kind of cardio machine or anything like that is going to kind of get you in shape for being able to jump on a trampoline, be explosive there, land on a hardwood and not fall over, and then being able to run up and down the court. I was lucky enough at Stopper where I didn't have to do a lot of up and down movement on the court. I would come up and play a little offense, whether it be distributing or shooting. But I think I was lucky in that aspect of, kind of being able to hide my conditioning level. But, going into next year, that's going to be a big thing I need to focus on, just making sure I'm good to go, conditioning wise, because that was a huge aspect for me. I feel like where it did help me though was that physicality aspect. A lot of the guys were a little bit thinner. Well, maybe weren't as used to much contact as I was, and so that was something I really enjoyed, being able to kind of hit people again, especially with my body mass that I had being in the air. Even no matter how hard they were coming at me, I kind of could hold my ground to a certain extent. And so that was something that I enjoyed and kind of had an advantage in, and that's why I think I excelled a lot at Stopper, because I was a little bit more physical. I had a little bit more skill, maybe in regarding to hand placement. Playing tight end, battling with hands with the defensive lineman. That's not really something that a basketball player, I feel like, does that often. They might, use their body to protect themselves from a shot, but they're not using their hands to get other people's hands off them or away from them.
Yep.
And so I feel like that was a big thing that also carried over from SlamBall to football. But, yes, it's physical. I think that's the only really thing that they were, and that kind of competitive aspect to it, was definitely how they were similar. But, at the end of the day, they're very different and kind of how just everything goes about. And I feel like being able to adapt to it was a big part of it as well. But yes, they're similar in physicality, but they definitely have a lot of big differences that I was lucky to have skill sets in.
Yeah. You could tell you had to have some athleticism, because I mean, I'm not saying this as a professional, but I do not know if a big heavyset tight end could come in and be successful in this sport like you have. It seems like you have to be able to redirect and do things and think offhand. And much like football is much more of a team sport, I feel like. This is almost like basketball, where you got a lot of individual skill that has to shine through for your team to be able to compete. So I could definitely see what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Now let me ask you this: as stopper, what exactly was your job? Like, what did you do in terms of gameplay?
Yeah, so at the stopper position, essentially like a goalie would be in hockey. I'm kind of majority of the time I'm going to be underneath the hoop, behind the hoop. Depending on the team, depending on the offense, some stoppers would come into the offense, just add another body, because it is 4-on-4. And so, if a stopper wasn't involved with the offense, then it would be 3-on-3 on the outside, but then the defensive stopper would have, they wouldn't have to account for that extra person. And so I feel like with our offense, having that stopper up and at least being somewhat of a threat, put a lot more pressure on the defense because they couldn't guard everybody on the perimeter. The stopper had to maybe be more involved defensively, making sure that passing lanes weren't as necessarily as open as they were. But at my, as I started, I very much was hoping just to kind of stay in the stopper's box and not have to go out, because I knew that conditioning factor was going to be a large component. Because even in practice, jumping up and down for a couple hours on the trampoline, not even having to get out and run and that kind of thing, just staying in the trampoline is taxing in itself. And so I really wanted to kind of just stay in my own lane. I knew I could be physical. I knew I could block shots. I knew I could get vertical in the trampoline. And that's kind of what I had only focused on And then, later in the year, I was like, okay, I feel confident doing this. Now I'm going to go out, take a couple shots. I don't think my coaches even knew that I could shoot. They were very much surprised when I started making 4-pointers and shooting a lot. And I ended up leading the league in 4-pointers, which is a crazy thing to even think
awesome,
about.
Dude.
I don't know for sure if 4-pointers were a thing in SlamBall before this year, but if they weren't and I led the league, that means, I have the most 4-pointers in the history of SlamBall. And so, like, to say that is just a crazy, that's not something that I can even comprehend, to say I have the most 4-point shots made in SlamBall, maybe even in other basketball. I don't know how much 4-pointers are even that much of a thing. And, in other sports, I know they have them in like all-star games and celebrity games and that thing, but I don't think many people have made upwards of 6.
The history books, man. You're making them.
Exactly. And so, but as a stopper in general, your job is to protect the rim. And so, as you can kind of see in the clips, there's 4 trampolines. There's 3 on the outside. Those are all the same side. But then the stoppers box or the stoppers trampoline, that one's just a little bit bigger. It's a little bit longer. It's a little bit wider, just because it gives the stopper it gives a stopper just more room to work with, and I think it also gives the stopper a disadvantage in the fact of it allows more offensive opportunities. Because even looking here, you can see the top one is a lot smaller than the bottom one.
Yep.
Like those boxes are the same size on the tramps, and so you can see there's a lot more room on the outside of those boxes.
Yep.
And so the stopper, that rectangle in the middle with the plus sign, that's where the stopper can legally be.
Gotcha.
That's, he can't necessarily be outside that while someone else is in the trampoline. Obviously I can jump in wherever I want if no one else is in the trampoline, but that's kind of where I, say, in basketball, if someone goes straight up, that's what, that's what SlamBall is the, equivalent to. You have to stay in that box. You have to be staying vertical. You can't drift into somebody. Say I jump in and I just completely just ram the guy straight into him, like they're going to call some kind of penalty on me for that. And so, there are rules. I, kind of have to stay within my box. I have to stay within my, aerial space. There's, as the season progressed, we kind of learned what we can do, what we can get away with, just like any other sport. You're going to learn how the refs are calling it. And so what things work well, what things you kind of, what to make things not look as obvious. But as a stopper, you have that box, and, guys can either attack you from the outside. And so being able to time them, if they get a big run up, you kind of know, okay, they're going to jump from the outside tramp and try to dunk on you. And then, if they kind of are coming in a little bit slower, more under control, they're maybe looking to go on the side tramp to the bottom, attack me from there. And so not only was it being able to get vertical, but a lot of it was being able to read kind of guys' body language. And as the season progressed, stoppers got a lot better at reading guys' body, positioning, and the offensive players got a lot better at reading stoppers' positioning. And so I think that's going to be something that's going to be even more explosive kind of in the next coming series and seasons of SlamBall. How that dynamic of, it's kind of like in baseball where, pitchers are overpowered and it's a pitching battle, that kind of thing. But then some years it's, guys are hitting home runs and, having so many hits and score so much, I think it's that kind of dynamic with stoppers and offensive players. I think even in that short 4-week season, you saw weeks where the stoppers were dominant. No one really got anything going. And then you saw weeks where guys, were scoring 40 points, 40, 50 points, which is just insane. And then the next week, stoppers kind of, okay, this is how these guys move. This is how we're going to, play it differently on defense. And so I think that dynamic is only just going to be even more explosive and more creative in that whole aspect of it. Because it's not, I feel like with football and basketball and that kind of thing, maybe the professional level, there's a little bit of this, but with SlamBall, you can be very creative in how you do things. And I feel like a lot of times you were out there, a guy would do something and you would be like, is that even legal? Like, I feel like what he just did is like, that shouldn't be allowed, that shouldn't be, but that's just kind of what SlamBall is. If someone does something so crazy and so athletic and so cool, that's like, that's, you have to learn how to defend that. And I think that's not as much of an aspect for other other sports, because, you can attack a certain guy's skill set, you can attack a certain guy's ability, but, that creativity aspect of SlamBall, I think, is also huge. And I think I think there's guys who are, doing flips while they're trying to dunk, or they're doing 360s, even dunking on people between the legs, dunking on people, so it's like a dunk contest, but now there's someone trying to block you. And so if you can pull that off, that's just awesome. And then I know some stoppers were trying to do like 360 blocks at some point, which is like, that's, if we get to that point, then we'll see if I can do that. But, I was happy with my skill set. I was going to keep it nice and simple on defense. And then if I could come up and make a couple shots, make a couple assists, maybe here or there, that was going to be my, I was going to be happy with that, especially coming in super late. I think that was, I kind of took what they gave me, and I think it ended up going really well.
Yeah. When I was researching more about you, now I want to mention this too before we get going. What's his name? Sam Roberts. Do you know him? He does a podcast. Yep. So I messaged him to try to get some clips of you, because this is before I could actually show the YouTube stuff, and he had pointed me towards a website that's used to find more stuff. And
okay.
So I actually looked at your in-game stats for a lot of games, and I can tell what you're saying there. I mean, you got the beginning of the season, you can see you have no points, but as it goes, you creep up, and your play time increases as well.
Yep.
You go from 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 11 minutes. So, I mean, you can see what you're talking about on paper for sure. Yep. You have the stats to back it up. I want to say too about Sam. Appreciate Sam. He helped me out. He got me a resource for that. His podcast is called Bounce Off, a SlamBall podcast. It's a weekly podcast involving SlamBall. Check him out, guys at home, if you want more info. He's a great guy. He answered me immediately, very friendly. So I look forward to talking with him more in the future.
Yeah. Sam's awesome. I talked to him a little bit. He did kind of a player poll, and he asked a bunch of players kind of just questions about the season and how things had gone. And I think he mentioned at some point that he would, love to do an interview with me as well, just because that they made it such a point of who I was, that I was a long snapper. And because the guy who was announcing that weekend was a long snapper as well.
Gotcha.
And so they made it such a big part of who I was. And that was kind of my nickname for majority of the session, especially once I kind of started playing more. They called me the long snapper. I don't think they called me Nathan, or they didn't call me Karsjens that often. I thought it was just long snapper a lot. So I think, I look forward to talking to him, Sam, about it more, because, he obviously was doing his homework. And I even watched some of his podcasts during the season just to see what someone else thought about, because I knew he was watching all the games. And so it was cool to watch him and watch, his take on all the things. And so he's a great guy.
Yeah, he reminds me of the SlamBall version of myself almost. To be honest,
with absolutely, you. Absolutely.
When I went and was researching SlamBall, he was the first one that came up. I started looking and was like, "Oh yeah, this guy knows his stuff."
Yeah,
you can tell he does it for the love. So, appreciate you, Sam, for that help. We didn't actually use what he suggested just because we got the easier clips, but I did find what he was talking about.
Oh yeah,
I'll include all his stuff in the notes, guys, if you want to check him out. He's pretty good at what he's doing. But before we move on to more of the show, we had a bunch of comments, and I'm notorious about this because I get so absorbed into the interview, I forget there's comments. So just wanted to highlight some, and I think some are your family, some aren't. Let's see. Here's the first one I got from Mary. Do you know Mary?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I know her very well.
She seems like she's a big fan.
Yep. No, she's my girlfriend's grandmother.
Understood.
And so her, my girlfriend, her mom, and then obviously Mary, her grandma, all came out for a game. And so that was really awesome just to see a familiar face, because I kind of flew out to Vegas on, a 1 day notice.
Gotcha.
Didn't really get a chance to even see. I think I saw my parents at the airport. They met me at the airport, but, I didn't really get to get a chance to say goodbye to a lot of people. And so having some familiar faces come out and visit me in Vegas and kind of just spend some time with them, that was awesome. And so, yeah, she's been a great supporter ever since me and my girlfriend have started dating. She's a big fan of mine, back when I was still at Western, and then obviously now that I'm playing SlamBall. So, it's really nice to see that she tuned in.
Yes, sir. I agree with you. Thank you for watching, Mary. Appreciate you greatly. We got Martha. I'm guessing this is your mother. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes,
Gotcha.
that's the mom.
Oh yeah, so she knows, she loves you. I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes, I think both mom and dad are very excited to tune in and watch. So
Cool. Yeah, your family seems great, man, from researching you, and then what you told me now. I mean, that's my type of people. I'll say that's what I've been around for many a years. So,
absolutely.
Oh, we got XFL Mike G. This is one of my guys. Great guy. Punters are athletes too.
Yeah, a lot of I've had that phrase translated in many different ways. I've had long snappers are athletes too. I've had punters are athletes too. So I feel like I know that statement all too well. Kind of being that guy on the outside looking in and just kind of proving that I am an athlete, whether it was a punter or long snapper or whatever it was.
And this next one, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe you know more about it. But what are we talking about here?
So yeah, that's Ackley's my hometown, and so that's David. He was my high school coach's son, and
Gotcha.
so he was 3 or 4 years under me. I think he might have been a freshman when I was a senior, or if he was a sophomore when I was a senior. I know he was just a couple years below me, and so early in my high school career, he was a water boy. He was always around at practices. He was always just a cool guy, a cool kid that was super excited about just everything that was going on. And so recently, me and him have been in contact. I think he's still back coaching, doing a lot of that kind of stuff. But we'll congratulate on each other on whatever's going on in each other's lives. So he'll reach out and we'll talk to each other. But yeah, I think he's just excited to see someone from Ackley doing something that's not a lot of people from Ackley do.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Thank you for watching, David. And lastly, it's another one from Mike G. Mike's always got the best comments. That transition from trampoline to the hardwood hurt my knees just watching.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think the first couple times you do it, you don't really even know what's going to happen, and then obviously you do it more and more and it becomes a lot easier and you learn how to land. But initially just thinking, okay, I'm jumping on a trampoline, maybe I'm not jumping super high, I'm only jumping 5 feet in the air, 6 feet in the air. But then you think, okay, let me get on top of a 6-foot ladder and just jump off and land on something hard. That when you think about it that way, you're like, whoa, that's way too much.
Yep.
But I think a thing that helped was, and I don't think you can really notice it unless you go to a SlamBall game and you go to the court. The hardwood, it's not just a regular basketball court where, if a regular basketball court, it's wood and, it's very solid. There may be some give depending on what the level. I know some NBA courts have a little bit of give just because, they know that landing is such a, large thing. But it's not just a regular old, high school basketball court. They each section of the court, obviously the court's raised about 6 feet because with the trampolines, the trampoline goes down 4 or 5, maybe even, close to 6 feet every time someone jumps in, especially if a lot of guys jump in at the same time. And so there needs to be that kind of room underneath. But it's kind of like a tiling for the hardwood. It's not necessarily super, the hardwood isn't like a trampoline either. It's definitely hard. You definitely can land. But there's still some give.
Gotcha.
Because it's tiled. I feel like there's a little bit more just room for tiles to kind of move somewhat depending on how you land on it. And so by landing on it doesn't mean that, it just puts all the pressure on your joints. There's still some give. And so, it's not necessarily you just jumping 10 feet off the ground onto the solid ground. There's a little bit of give. And so there's a little bit of softness to landings, but it's not anything, it's not like you're jumping on a pad or you're jumping on another trampoline. You're definitely landing. And so it definitely, learning how to land and landing softly was a thing that I didn't even get, even at all during the season. I had some people come up to be like, hey, you need to land a lot softer. Like that's going to take a toll after a while. But I had another guy come up and say, that's a sign that you are going to be a really good stopper, because that just tells me that you're not just absorbing the contact, you're pushing into the ground every time you land. And as a stopper, you need to be able to get up, kill your bounce, locate everyone else, but then push yourself back up into the air. And so he kind of reassured me like, hey, like, yes, it's nice to land softly, but it's also a good trait to have. And so, if it didn't hurt me, then I was going to keep doing it. So that was kind of, I was okay with it. But, maybe in 10, 15 years, if I continue to do this for a while, maybe I should have landed a lot softer. Maybe my knees and ankles will be screaming at me in a decade or two.
You're probably going to do that either way, man. You might as well enjoy it now while you can.
Absolutely.
So that's all the comments I really got. In terms of questions, I had a couple. You answered the floor question. I was going to ask you more about it because when you watch clips, you can tell the floor is a little different. It's not like a normal floor. So that was a question of mine. In terms of the trampolines, now I know I took like gymnastics in college, and this is where I first got my experience with these kind of trampolines. And I know if you don't hit that thing correctly, you're going to go a whole opposite direction.
Yeah.
Did you find that was difficult to kind of learn coming in and I guess redirecting your weight?
Yeah, I think the biggest struggle for me was not necessarily like moving side to side. The biggest part for me is I wanted to jump every time I hit the trampoline. And so I'd be going. And then, if I wanted to go super high, I'd bend my knees a ton and then my legs would just give out because that was way too much pressure, And so, learning how to trust the trampoline in the first place, realizing that trampoline is going to do most of the work no matter what. And that most of the time guys are just pushing through their toes. They're not even really, they'll use their legs a little bit, use it like, the guys who are really high flyers, they'll use their legs if they kind of develop that skill. But, most of the guys, when they're jumping super high and they're getting vertical, consistently, they're just pushing right through their toes. And so that was more of a struggle for me, learning and like trying to trust not to have to jump, like bend my legs a lot and really try to jump each time. Regarding like training with the trampolines, when I came in, the way they explained it to me, that I'd have a couple days to kind of just get a feel for the trampolines. They kind of just wanted to see me move around, and so that whole transition was super just crazy for me because I flew in the next morning. I did like physicals, all this stuff. I kind of had some medical paperwork that didn't go through right away. And so I had to wait an extra day or two before I can even get on the trampolines. And so not only was I coming in super late, but, I was kind of delayed even further. And I think I came in on like a Tuesday or Wednesday. And the first time I got on the trampolines was Friday or Saturday. And the guy pretty much told me like, hey, if you didn't go today, and I didn't see a ton of potential in what you were doing, like we were going to send you home because they just didn't have enough time to see me and see if I had the stuff to do it. But luckily I went at it one day and he was like, yeah, I think you have what it takes. And then, they kind of just put me directly into team practices. I was still doing kind of like solo work on the outside, but they put me kind of into a team practice, learning how to do all those skills. Like they had learned how to dribble on the trampolines, all that kind of stuff. I hadn't done that at all, and so trying not to look like a fool and trying to, kind of just look like I kind of know what I'm doing. That was a big part of it too. And so I kind of had to sort of learn on the fly, and they kind of just they pushed me into it. And I think, like I said before, that's kind of how I feel like my athletic career has always been. I feel like, doing something very last minute, doing something that maybe I'm not super comfortable with, but then it ends up going really great. I might have had some setbacks here or there with SlamBall. I got hurt, I think second or third week. Just a lower, I tweaked my ankle, tweaked my knee a little bit. Nothing super serious, but with being on your trampoline every day, you kind of have to be 100%. Like that's you can't really hide that.
Yep.
Like maybe you can in football or any other sport. And so I think a big part of that too is just kind of having them push me into it. I didn't really get that time to transition to it, but no, I everything happened for a reason, and it ended up going really great. I started with a team. They put me on a different team, and they were like, "We feel like you have potential to be really good." And kind of slowly, just inch by inch, get improved every week. Got more comfortable on the trampolines. Got more comfortable with the game in general. And you can kind of see that, like you said, week by week, game by game, you can kind of see, okay, he played 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay, he played 10 minutes. Okay,
Yep.
he played 15. Oh, he played 20 minutes and he scored 8 points. Or he played 20 minutes and he made 2 4-pointers and he got a face off and all that kind of stuff like that. A lot of those things I just kind of went with, and I just, I was like, hey, I'm here. I might as well just show them what I got, and it ended up going really well.
Understood. I mean, you basically answered one of my questions. I was just going to ask you to describe, your experience, but I think we got a pretty good idea of how that goes, in terms of actual play. You make it sound easy, but I know this stuff's hard.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult.
Yeah.
It looks hard, man, but much respect to you, dude, to be able to just change sports like that. I know, football wise, whatever you end up doing, whether it be the new XFL, USFL, or if it's AFL or CL, anything like that, with what you're talking and your skill set and your work ethic, I think you have a place somewhere. You just got to find where you're home at, man.
Yep, absolutely.
That's awesome that you can do those things, because a lot of people are stuck, unfortunately, in doing one thing all the time.
Yep.
And it may not be what you want, but it's just what you're gifted with. But congrats, man.
Thank you.
Let's see. Mike asked a question regarding SlamBall. I'll get to that question in just a second, Mike. I want to finish the whole convo before I get to that one. I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and answer Mike's question. Mike said, how do we watch SlamBall?
And so I think originally a lot of them were on ESPN Plus. I think I checked recently. I don't know. They only have so much of a archive of games. You can see a lot of the highlights, a lot of they might not be full games yet. I don't know if they'll share full games. I know you can see full games from like the original SlamBall in the early 2000s. They'll have those on YouTube, but I'm sure you can look up highlights. Just Google SlamBall or Google SlamBall highlights. You can watch majority of the top 10 plays, or top dunks of the week, or blocks of the week, or whatever it may be. I think they have a lot of the playoff games on YouTube as well. I think they're just highlights, and so you can watch like the 5 or 6 7-minute supercut of the quarterfinal games, semifinal games, championship game. Something I didn't mention is I was lucky enough to be on a team that we made the championship game. That was something that I was like, oh, I hope we make the playoffs when we first learned about the playoffs. And then we made the playoffs. We kind of solidified our spot. And then I felt like we had a really good, path to the playoffs. I knew at some point we were going to play the Mob. And so for those of you who are familiar with SlamBall, the Mob was just unstoppable force. Not only did they have an amazing offense, they had the best stopper in the league. And so if on the off chance you could stop them, you weren't going to score on them. Or if you could score on them, there was no way you're going to stop them. And, unfortunately we lost in the championship game, but
gotcha.
I feel like that was just, I was building. And I think not only was I building, but our team was kind of coming together as a unit as I was starting to play a lot better, because the other stopper on our team was Amir Smith. I don't think he necessarily wanted to play stopper. He was very skilled on offense. He was a big guy. He was my height, a little bit thinner, a little bit more athletic. And so he was a monster on the other end. He could, jump from the outside tramp and dunk on you before you could even blink. And so I think what was big for our team is allowing me to play stopper, allowing him to go play offense. That just added to the whole dynamic of our team. And so, me playing well not only allowed me to perform better and, showcase my skill better, but I think it just allowed our team to do what they could do best. And I think that was originally why I transitioned teams. I kind of, again, like it was a learning curve, and I kind of had to go with the fly and go with the flow. I don't think at the early stage, my coaches were necessarily comfortable putting me in there a ton because I was super new to it. But then, I made certain plays. I did the right things in practice, and they were like, hey, we're going to give you a shot. And when they gave me my shot, I performed. And then they were like, hey, like, this is something we can, kind of count on. And so I think that's something I hope to build on next summer, getting there hopefully when everyone else does. So having that month to prepare, I only had a couple weeks to prepare, just getting more comfortable with being able to do it. Because I think my skill set, my baseline skill set outside of everything else is almost perfect for SlamBall, physical, but I have a lot of basketball skill. And so that'll be really good next summer, obviously. And then if I can play football in the meantime, in one of these leagues, that would be even better because I would be staying in shape. I'll be putting tape out for something that I've been doing for the last, I don't even know, 14 years of my life, ever since I was a, pee-wee playing flag football and that kind of thing. And so if I can continue to play football, I would love to do that. But SlamBall just came out of nowhere, and it was one of the greatest experiences I've had, especially being in Vegas. And so if I can do both, that would be incredible. If I can just do SlamBall, if I can do just football, again, that's also fine with me, because at least I'm doing something with my athletic ability before I, obviously get too old.
Oh yeah, I agree with you, and yeah, that's one of my questions. I mean, it basically was what your future plan is and how you plan on getting back to football. Let's get to that towards the end, though, if that's okay.
Yep, no
'Cause I
problem.
definitely want to hear about it. And regardless of what you're doing anything's better than nothing. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, this seems like a niche, and it seems like something that not many people are going to be specifically good at playing. So it's
very
really
true.
valuable skill, man. Now, to answer more of Mike's question, now the site that Sam shared with me earlier is a public site, so I'm going to share it real quick. And actually, every game is on here. You just kind of got to work to find it.
Yeah.
Player stats are on here. Everything's on here that you would need to really research from last season. And Mike, I'm going to get ready to comment. All right. So let's go. Let's make this baby full screen. I don't know how. There we go. All right. So if you look up, I mean, so I've been looking at games, so I have a recent history up here.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, basically what you're going to do is you're going to click the teams and you're going to go to like Buzzsaw. And then here's one of their games. And let's see, that's from the playoffs. So let's do the regular season. There's all the regular season games. So you can even click stats, and then it'll bring you to the stats, or you can just hit watch game and watch the whole game. I mean, it's really whatever you want to do. It took me a little bit to figure this out. So if anybody checks this out at home, just work with it. So here it breaks the whole game down. It's not pulled up yet. As soon as it pulls up, it breaks the whole game down, and you can pick what plays you actually want to look at. So, I mean, just for example, let's look at loose ball recovery. Just like right here. So we can watch those plays. This system is fantastic. I will say, after learning how to use it, I wish football had this in this capacity.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
This was, I think, I don't know if it's the same site, but we would obviously watch film on games, and it was very similar to this. We could watch exactly when certain guys scored, how certain guys were getting in, whatever they were doing. And so, yeah, it's super intuitive. You can just look up a certain player. You can look up a certain stat. You can click on it, and it'll show you exactly kind of where and when it happened.
Yep. Just had to show the people at home that's going to be an awesome interactive experience whenever like next season hits. The actual season runs from July to August, correct? Is that?
Yeah. It was. I think it was early July, and then I think the championship was around August 17th, 18th. Around, so like middle August, and so it's about a month and a half.
Cool. So you lived in Vegas? You were housed in Vegas the whole time?
Yep. And so I flew out. So I had to fly out there, and I had to pay for that. But then once I get out there, they were gonna put me in housing and that kind of thing. They put me in a hotel for what seemed like a long time, because they didn't put me in a team yet, and I was kind of just doing my own training. And they wanted to make sure I was on the certain team for sure. But then all the teams were put in like individual Airbnbs. And so you would live with your teammates essentially.
Understood.
And so not only would you ride to practice with each other, but you would spend like the rest of your time with them. And so it really allowed you to kind of get to know them a lot better. You weren't just seeing them a couple hours a day. You were seeing them, almost 24/7. And so that was awesome. And they provided transportation. When I was in the hotel, they would give me codes to get, a taxi or get a lift. And then once I moved to a house, they had like, team vehicles that we used to get from place to place.
Sweet. That's awesome, dude. I mean, that has to make an impact on your playing, just knowing you took care of in the back burner.
Yeah. That was a big part of it.
That's one of the saddest things about some of the stuff that comes up, such as the smaller leagues and stuff, is when they actually take, full advantage of these players. And so seeing that something like this is giving you all this tape, they're taking care of you, they're paying you, and then plus you got the teammates with you. I'm sure that helps amplify the gameplay. There's no way around it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this question. How would your teammates describe you if I sat down and said, "Hey, can you describe Nathan for me or long snapper for me?"
I feel like, there you go. I think, I was super quiet initially, especially with SlamBall because I was super new. And so I didn't really know. I had gotten some initial kind of feedback on who each player was and kind of at least how they played. I didn't really kind of know their personality. I just kind of had watched them practice a couple times. And so the first couple of days that I moved in, even prior when I'd practiced with them, I kind of stayed super quiet. Um, I'm not someone who has to force myself on others. I'm going to see how comfortable they are with me, how I feel comfortable with them before I kind of start, forcing my personality onto them.
Yes, sir.
But I feel like what kind of went hand in hand was the better I started playing in practice or in the games, I feel like that was the more and more my personality kind of came out. And I'm sure a lot of the guys on my team will tell you, I was joking with them 24/7. Like I would take inside jokes that they had that I'd been hearing, and I would, turn it up a notch, and and that whole kind of thing. We had a thing on our team. One of the guys we called him the glue, and he was kind of, obviously he was the guy that kind of kept everyone together. And a couple weeks in, I was just joking, and I was like, "No, honestly, I feel like I'm the glue. I'm the one that kind of keeps everyone together." And then most of the guys were like, "Yeah, that makes sense. You seem to do that better than he does." And so that was a big. I think that was a big just kind of transition. Everyone was like, "Yeah, Nate's actually a really cool guy. Not only is he, a good athlete, good at SlamBall, but like he seems like he's very invested in all of us." And I keep in contact with a lot of those guys still to this day. Some of those guys they're almost like celebrities in their own right. I'm may or may not have been the least, famous of all the people in SlamBall. I'm sure there was a couple other guys who only had a couple hundred followers like I do, but um, I felt like I was able to keep everyone grounded and keep everyone together. And so that's one thing definitely about me. I'm definitely serious when I need to be serious, when games, in practice, when, I think that whole kind of coaching aspect comes into it too. Being able to read not only players, but how your coaches are trying to go about something, how just read the room in regards to what's kind of, how are guys feeling right now? How should we be feeling? I feel like that's a big part of how I was able to translate to my players my teammates as well. That coaching aspect to it, of being able to like, okay, this is, we're doing well, we're building, I can kind of be joking, I can be funny, but then also like, we need to get this right. We need to fix this. And I think my teammates kind of saw that in me as well. And I think that was kind of how I was in, at Western and football. Um, I wasn't always a super vocal guy. I was going to speak up when I felt like I needed to speak up, but like I said, I don't want to force myself on anybody. I don't want to feel like I'm overbearing and trying to tell someone how to do something, because I wouldn't want someone to tell me to do that. I hate when people are super all like, this is what you need to do, like, and they never kind of let up and they never let you learn. I think a big part of growing as a person and as an athlete is, a coach gives you instruction, but then you have to figure it out yourself.
Find your own way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just listen to a coach and do exactly what he says over and over and over again. You're not going to build any kind of, problem solving skills, as a person or as an athlete. And so I think all my teammates back at Western would, kind of describe me the same way. I'm definitely a goofball. I love to mess around. I love to, joke around, have a good time, obviously within the confines of, it's appropriate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the guy who can read the room, and obviously it's very tense, and I'm not going to, crack a joke then. I know when to speak, and I know when to be serious. I know when to be funny. And I feel like a lot of guys would say that about me. I feel like they would say that I don't talk a lot, but when I do talk, it's either hilarious or it's very insightful. And so the majority, that would probably how my teammates would describe me. They would either describe me as hilarious, or they'd mostly describe me as hilarious. They probably wouldn't, they wouldn't say that I'm insightful right away. But if you ask, if you ask them, what about when things are serious? How would you describe him? They'd be like, oh no, he's very thought out. He's very cerebral in how he goes about things with the sport. But they would definitely say that I was funny, and I was always just joking around when things were light and when things were funny.
Understood. Maybe we'll get a SlamBall reality TV show next year. That'd be entertaining.
Awesome, honestly. That'd be awesome.
All right, I got a couple more questions for you before we roll off the air. This one just goes back to a general question, okay? So what's your best athletic experience? I mean, out of life. You could be high school, college, this and SlamBall, whatever you think's the best.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna give one from high school, one from college, and obviously I think to go without saying SlamBall was not the craziest best experience I've had as an athlete. Like I'd obviously be lying. It was, honestly, there's still times I just think about. I was in Vegas for a month and a half. I didn't have to pay for anything. I was essentially going to a gym, going to an arena, and doing PE, essentially playing a PE game with some of my closest friends at the time, every day for 2 hours. Like that's honestly the best way I can explain it. Like you go in, everyone is having a blast. Like that's another thing I haven't mentioned yet, but like everyone with SlamBall was solely invested on furthering the sport. Like there was no beefs. Like no one was like, oh yeah, that guy, he's kind of a character. No one really likes him. Like everyone was on the program of trying to progress SlamBall, make it the best it could be. And that goes top down. Like the guy I talked to trying to get out there, he was awesome. He was someone that I knew I was going to like from the first time I talked to him. He was cracking jokes. He was kind of like, hey, he knew, like, kind of like he knew when to be serious, when to crack jokes. Like I got that from him like instantly. And then when I met him face to face, it was the same thing. You knew when to fear him and when to know like, hey, he's being serious. But then you also knew that he was a fun guy and he wanted everything to go well. And so definitely overall, I feel like SlamBall has been the best experience I've ever had as an athlete. I feel like it really rejuvenated a lot of things in me with with just athletics in general. I felt like it taught me what it feels like to, have that competitive edge. Because I feel like, once you're at a certain level for so long, you kind of just, things aren't as new. You kind of go with the motions. It's impossible to go against that. Playing college football for so long, you're kind of like, oh yeah, and playing another game, going to a hotel, taking a lot of things for advantage, taking a lot of things, it was just, I don't know, it was just crazy. And there's still times I can't even really explain it. I talked to a guy in the team a week or so ago. He texted me and I was like, he even said like, there's still times I think back, like, did we even just do that? Like, were we on ESPN for a month and a half playing?
It was fast.
SlamBall? And so like, and just can't wait to do it again. And so that's definitely, I'd be lying if I say that wasn't my best athletic experience ever. For college, that would, not to say that it wasn't a football memory, but I remember one of my first couple of years, we had an intramural basketball team with a lot of football players and we won the championship. That was awesome. Like,
had some SlamBall like activities there.
Yeah. Like I didn't think, I'm a college athlete. There's no way I can do intramural basketball and there's no way they're going to let a team be all football players, but they were like, yeah, whatever. And so we just
wow, that is hard to believe, dude.
And so that we won a championship, and so that was cool. With football, I feel like the spring season of COVID, that was a majority of it. When we got that final win against Youngstown State, we had lost 5 in a row, and we were playing Youngstown at home. Kind of had some injuries, so like we weren't necessarily the deepest we had been at all. We kind of had I think going into that spring, we only had like 70 guys total in a roster, which is like crazy low for a Division I football team. Like that's
for sure.
Some high school teams have more numbers than that.
Yep.
And so going into that season, kind of knowing that this is going to, we're going to have to grind this out. And I think I made a couple good plays that game. Team ended up winning. And that ended up being our last game of the spring season because we had so many injuries. We just couldn't continue. I think that was just culmination of me playing really well. And then me playing well and the team playing really well. I felt like up to that point, it had been one or the other. I had a good game, but we lost, or, the team played really well, or didn't play as much. And so that was kind of both of them coming together, me feeling like, okay, I can succeed and the team can concede. And that was, I think that was really big for me in my collegiate career. High school, I obviously have to say, I think that was my state championship in discus because, well, and honestly, I don't even know if it was my state championship in discus. I think it might have been my runner up my junior year because I wasn't expected to be even top or podium, be top 8. I think going into that meet, I was like 12th or 13th or 14th. And, the headline, I think, said the next day, like, it takes a state record, state meet record throw to beat Karsjens. And it actually did. The guy who got first threw like 200 feet,
Dang.
which was like the state record. And I threw
Wow.
175, which is obviously 25 feet for like under what he threw. But the next guy under me was like 150. And so any other year I would have won, but unfortunately it just had been the year that he had won. And I think coming into it, thinking that I was maybe going to get 8th or 7th or 6th, but then performing as well as I did and then getting second and then losing to a guy who threw the meet record, I feel like that was just a point in my just career that I was like, wow, like I can actually be, not necessarily I can be someone, but, like things can go really well for me in certain things. And I think from that point on, going into my senior year of football and then basketball and then obviously playing sports in college, I think that was one of the biggest moments where kind of just, okay, I can kind of be somebody, I can make something of my name if I just, put my mind to it. And so that was kind of, I think that's what started my whole journey, kind of realizing, oh, like I'm actually, compared to everyone else, I'm actually a really good, well, first off, discus thrower, but then athlete in general.
Yeah, I mean, did you train going into that, or did you just play to kind of keep busy?
What do you mean with what?
Like for the discus, I know. Like, so for
Yeah.
example, in my school, the springtime track folks were mostly football players who didn't want to play another sport, and
Yeah.
they forced us into there. So that's why I asked: was it just a natural ability you found you had, or did you actually have to train towards that?
Yeah, I think I had some skill for it. I had thrown in junior high, and I think a large reason for my success in junior high was just again because I was a lot bigger than everybody else, and throwing a weight when I weigh more than everyone else, and I have a longer wingspan. And with discus, wingspan super important and speed. Like that was so I was super successful with it in there. But then moving up to high school, the discus goes up in weight and you can't just kind of rely on skill. And with discus and any kind of throwing, and even in any kind of field event and track, it's very much a skill set, and you kind of have to,
Technique.
yeah,
Yeah.
technique, everything like that. I never really had a, throws coach, I guess you could say. We had a throws coach for my first couple of years who knew a decent amount about throwing, but what's crazy about the way our, we didn't have an all-weather track. We had a dirt track. And so they would, our people would run around a dirt track, and then our shot put ring was, close to our track, but then our discus ring was on the other side of a creek that ran through our town. And
Hmm.
so we kind of had to walk over to the road, walk across like the bridge kind of thing that we had, and then walk down to, it was one of our practice fields for football, was where the discus ring was. And so the coach would likely always stay by the shot putters. That's kind of just how, he would, because there was more to them. And I feel like he kind of gave me certain insights my freshman and sophomore year, but I also did my own research on how to throw. And so I felt like my junior and senior year, especially, I was kind of the throws coach for discus. Like we had a coach for shot put, and he was, we had guys who had one stayed in shot put, one Drake relays and shot put. And so we were very exceptional in just throwing in general. But he kind of knew that I had taken a, kind of a coaching role in discus and kind of knew what I was talking about. And so he let me do my thing. And, I don't think I ever got specific instruction on how to throw correctly. I think I kind of just looked up and kind of did whatever felt right. And obviously it ended up being good for me. But yeah, it was definitely something that I practiced and put myself into because I don't think
Understood.
I rarely would run a track practice. I feel like with a smaller school, a lot of throwers will still run with the other runners because there's like, okay, everyone needs to run, everyone needs to be in shape. It doesn't matter, if you're throwing or not. And then after everyone ran, you would do your, field events, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But because we were so successful in throwing, I feel like the coach was like, you guys just, if you're going to score 10 points for us every meet in your events, go do your thing. Like that's worth it, I feel like. And honestly, I felt like it was too. And so I focused on throwing majority of the spring, and then I ended up doing pretty well, obviously, my junior and senior year. So that was a lot of good memories, with that crick and with throwing and just, the dirt track, all that kind of stuff. Coming from a small town, a lot of good stuff I can remember about it.
Oh, I bet, dude. And just the multi-sport athlete. I mean, you just said if it wasn't for playing a different sport, you don't know if you would have, I guess, adopted the athletic mindset that, hey, I can do whatever I want if I practice and try, really.
That was huge.
That's a necessary part of multi-sport athletes, is I feel. You should always play another sport. Proven time and time again, you're better at your sport when you're good at another sport. It's how it is. Different skill sets.
Yep, absolutely.
That's awesome, man. I did not expect the track and field background, but it definitely makes sense now, especially looking at you. I bet in middle school you were huge, man.
Oh yeah. I just had a giant wingspan, could kind of really just whip it. I wasn't really even spinning, and I would just stand there and just lean back and chuck it, and it would go a lot further than everybody else, just because I had the body type for it.
Yes, sir. All right, man. We're about done. I got a couple more questions, and then we'll see if anybody's got some questions for you in the comments. Let me see. I think this is about it. So this will be the last one. As a potential player of leagues like the XFL or USFL, how do you feel about this merger that they're talking? How does that make you feel about, in terms of opportunities that you may have for the future? Making that a professional experience. I mean, anything that you gauge on that.
I think initially I was a little disappointed because, I think the initial talks are that it's, at the end of the day, it's going from 16 teams to like 10 or however many there. It's not going to be
saying
16,
12 now, but
12,
there's nothing official. So
your
guesses are the same as mine.
Yeah. Even if it is, 4 less teams, like that's, say there's 50 some guys on a roster, that's 200 less spots that I would have access to. And so I'm a little discouraged in that aspect of it. Even going back to like when these leagues started, with COVID and everyone wanting to just watch sports. And I think a lot of reasons that a lot of sports are either becoming more popular or not, or, doing this merger, that kind of thing, is because of COVID, people being home a lot more, people wanting to binge, shows, binge athletics, whatever it may be. And so I think even from the early, as these leagues were being developed, and once they were kind of head to head, both being in the spring, they might not have had the exact same schedules, but both being in the spring to summer, both kind of competing for the same players in a sense, those guys who are just right below that NFL level, those guys who might need a little bit more refining before they can go to the NFL, some of those guys who were in the NFL, in a training camp, but then, they don't, obviously they make huge cuts in the NFL. And so if you make an NFL roster initially, but then get cut during training camp, a lot of those guys have nothing else to do. And a lot of those guys don't want to go to like indoor football league or an arena league because they don't see it as high value as what they feel like they are, which is completely understandable, I feel like, to me. And so I think definitely the XFL and USFL and the merger in general will fill a spot that I think is needed, because like MLB has minor leagues, the NBA has G League, these developmental leagues that are put in place for a reason. And so I definitely think it has its positioning, but I didn't think that the XFL and USFL were going to be able to compete against each other for a long period of time. And I think this merger just kind of proves that point and showing that they're not going to be able to compete against each other.
Yes,
and
sir.
it's probably the best interest for them to combine. And so with my educational background, right now I'm in grad school for sports management. And so I see that side of it. I see that they need to merge because it's what's best for the business side and what's best for making profits. Because at the end of the day, NFL, NBA, they're all trying to make a profit. They're all professional. They're all selling tickets for, hundreds of dollars and making millions of dollars, even billions of dollars a year, because that's the name of the game at the end of the day. And a lot of guys say with the NFL, with football, it's a business. And so when guys get cut, it's not personal. It's just, that's just how the kind of game has developed. It's a business. You either have the skill set or you don't. And that's kind of how it is at the end of the day. And so from the sports management side, I definitely see the importance of this going through and kind of working, because like I said, I don't think that they could compete against each other for much longer. That initial kind of COVID wave is kind of not as, big as it initially was. People aren't really pushing for watching football or having different avenues to watch football as much as they were. And so I definitely think it makes sense in the, business aspect of it, but as a player, as a potential player, especially if they do cut the teams down, that won't help me at all with trying to get into the league. But again, I think with them combining, I think the benefits from both, where one league had a pro, another league had a pro, there might've been a con here or there. I feel like with the merger, they're going to learn from both of their experiences and build a league that is better than either of them could have been separate. And so the only downside would be getting a chance to play, because I know there's likely going to be less spots no matter what happens. But I think it's going to be best for professional football in general, not only for the individual leagues. I feel like it's just going to be better for a developmental league for the NFL, and all that kind of stuff. And so, whereas, it doesn't help me necessarily getting a spot on a team in professional football, I think it's, at the end of the day, even if I don't get a shot next year or whatever, I feel like it's what's best for professional football. And especially with long snapping, not as much tight end, but long snapping is all about just being ready. That's, a lot of times teams only have one long snapper because that's all they need. They're not guys who are going out to get hurt or going out to do, they're very just reliable people, and they're going to do their job. And so if that means that I play SlamBall for, 3, 4, 5, even 5 years, and then a team calls and like, hey, we know you played SlamBall, but we know you're a long snapper in this new developmental league. And they're like, hey, we need you to come in and be a long snapper. And then if I still have the skill set to be a tight end, I can maybe do that still. And then if I do well at either, I don't know if being a 30-year-old tight end in one of this, developmental leagues is going to make that jump up to the NFL. Maybe I'm just a little too old at that point, but I feel like long snapping, especially if I'm doing that well at the developmental league, I feel like that jump to the NFL level would be not necessarily easy, but it's a lot more doable and believable, because, you do see long snappers in the NFL who are high 30s, if not all in their 30s. I feel like there's not a lot of long snappers are getting drafted out of college. Not a lot of long snappers are getting that chance directly out of college, because it is such a skill-based job. And so if you can get a guy who's been doing it for 10 plus years, and he's reliable, and he might not be the best coverage guy at the end of the day, that's more important than having a younger guy who's a little bit more athletic, maybe has a little bit more hunger to him, but he's not as skilled. And so he might snap it over the punter's head. That's, that they're not willing to make that, not willing to make that choice. And so, ultimately, if I can play tight end, like I said, if I can play tight end now and a developmental league, XFL, USFL, or the combined league, I feel like that would be awesome. But I do realize that as I get older, the tight end part of my game might just kind of not be in the cards anymore. But I'm totally open to being a long snapper. Like I said, I think I've told to friends and family, if I can be a long snapper till I'm 40, but I don't start until I'm 28, 29, 30, that's still 10 years in the NFL or playing professional football. That'll be perfect for me, because long snapper, like I said, isn't, you're not receiver, you're not a tight end, you're not a running back, you're not a cornerback, you're not one of these people that are running up and down. You're doing your skill. You still have to be somewhat athletic, but you're doing your job, you're getting off the field, and it's not as much, tax on your body. And so,
agreed.
And so at the end of the day, with the merger, yes, it kind of is going to give me less opportunity to maybe play in one of the leagues, but I do see how it's going to benefit not only the players who are playing in it, but the leagues in itself and the future of professional football.
Understood. Great answer. I'm not even going to attempt to like hash that out. I understand. So it's good you see the value in it, and that's really where it lies, is giving people like you an opportunity to showcase what you got.
Yep.
And it is unfortunate that you're going to see some jobs cut, whether it be like actual player jobs, coaching, administration staff, whatever. I mean, you're going to see some jobs be cut. Now, I lied to you earlier. I said this was the last question. I actually got one more. So sorry, man.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Okay. So what's your future goals? I mean, you kind of already said it, but I mean, in a basic sense, I mean, what are you looking to do this next year?
Honestly, I think if I can play football this spring, this winter, that would be awesome. At this point, because I think SlamBall went so well, I don't think I would go and play like the International Football League, I believe is what it's called, like the one down in Mexico. The IFA, yep. Or the association, the IFA, or like an arena league, an indoor league, European league. Not to say that's necessarily below me, but because I was so successful in SlamBall, I don't see myself going into a league unless it is, XFL, USFL.
And you're not going backwards. You're only going up.
Yeah. And so I see the SlamBall as at the same level as what the XFL and the USFL is. And so I'm only going to go laterally. I'm not going to go back down. Just because there's that chance I get hurt. And if I'm going down, getting hurt, that's just a terrible story. And you would hate to see something like that happen. And so if I get that chance to move laterally or even vertically in whatever sense, that's kind of what my goals are now. I know I'm going to be back next summer for SlamBall. And so if that means this spring, this winter, I don't get a chance playing football, I'm still going to be doing something as a professional athlete, which I think is better than if I wasn't. My original plan after I'd finished playing football was I was going to give myself until I finished my grad degree to see if anything had happened. I was going to continue to train. I was going to continue to obviously eat right, do my long snapping.
Let's pause right here. Hold on. Training. You're still training. Where are you training? Stay that on air, please.
And so I'm training still at Western Illinois at the weight room. Majority of the time, I'm still working with a lot of the strength coaches that I had back then. They're putting me through workouts that are very similar to what either the guys are doing now or they had done, in a specific training season. Still training to be explosive, still training to be as strong as I can be. I am working now a little bit more with SlamBall and their kind of administrative and their training staff. I think we have meetings coming up soon regarding off-season training, off-season events, that kind of thing. And so I'll be talking with them about that, just being in good shape general. Like I said before, I don't think SlamBall and football are necessarily equal in what you need to train for them, but I'm going to do the best I can to be ready for either or. Obviously, I know I'm going to be ready for next summer with SlamBall, but I always got to be ready if that football opportunity comes knocking. If I can, get the right, frame, get the right kind of body type to get back into football, I always want to be available to do that. I don't want to just kind of trim down, get super light, be prepared only for SlamBall. I want to be able to do both, one or the other. And so bulking back up right now, because again, like I said, I lost a little bit of weight for SlamBall. Trying to get back to that football size and shape and ability is super huge for me right now. So that's kind of where my training's at, 5 days a week, if not 6 days, doing stuff on Saturday. I'm always trying to stay active and just stay in the best shape I can be. Because at the end of the day, now my job is to, be a professional athlete. At the end of the day, my job is no longer, my job is my body. And so, so I have to make sure I'm in the good shape and the right opportunities to do that.
Your body is your temple. And let's get back to the athletic goals. So you said you're still, you basically went back through it. You're training and you're hoping for that opportunity either way, but you're still going to be available for the SlamBall. You're training towards SlamBall right now. But for example, let's say, I don't know, Houston Roughnecks call you up next year. Hey man, we need a long snapper. Are you ready to roll out and play?
Yeah. Oh, I feel like absolutely. Cool. I feel like, and I've told people this before, but I feel like anything with athletics, at least in my experience, it's like riding a bike. You just got to get back on. You might get back on the bike and you're like, okay, I haven't done this in a while. But I feel like if I got back on a bike right now, I'd couple pedals and I'm back kind of into it. I still, I have my NFL ball that I still mess around with, a couple days a week, maybe once a day a week. Now because I am a little bit more busy, but I'll still snap once a week, kind of get back into that rhythm of things. I'll play catch with some people, do that kind of thing, so I don't lose those skills, because those are obviously very important skills to have. And I'm working very closely with the Gridiron crew. I signed with them this summer, and they're also on the lookout, promoting me, promoting my name. That's the only reason I came on to do this, is because they were, they had the contact to talk to you about it, and obviously they got me to come on, and obviously they talked about SlamBall, and that's super important. But no, yeah, I think I'd be ready to go for sure. Necessary, if I would be, they called me and they're like, "Hey, we need you to play tomorrow." But I don't think anyone would be ready for that kind of thing. But if someone was like, "Hey, it's December, or even it's January, and they're getting to their training camp, and they're like, 'Hey, we need an extra body, a long snapper, like come in,' I'd 100% be ready to come back in, train with them, be ready to go, because I am, I have that body type where I'm perfect for a lot of different things. I have that size, so I'm good at football, but at the same time, I'm also nimble enough to be an athlete. Like, it's just, I feel like I have that body type where that's not a problem. You have guys who are either not necessarily as tall, maybe they're 6'2", they still have a bigger, they have to have that more weight to them. I feel like 6'5", 6'6", playing football, is kind of that perfect weight where you hold, you hold good weight, but it's not necessarily bad weight. A majority of it is going to be good. Majority of it, the time you're used to being able to move a certain way, you don't need to be or feel super heavy. And so I feel like that's being at this size, being at this weight is just perfect for being ready to go, and just, making sure I'm trained. And obviously it's going to be transition, but at the same time, just being ready to go and do whatever. I mean, that's kind of how SlamBall happened. I got a call. I called them, and they called me out the next day, and I was, I was in the perfect shape for it because it was basketball and I wasn't used to that. But at the same time, I was able to adapt to it pretty well. And so to kind of do the same thing, I feel like I'd be able to do it very well.
Understood. I mean, you basically answered my question. The specialists are hard to find in any degree, especially experienced specialists. I mean, specialist, Lord, it's almost 2 hour mark. I told you when we got on, once you hit that 2 hour mark, it starts getting easy to mess things up.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yep.
But yeah, dude, I mean, I think you got a good career going. Either way it goes, it's cool that you've got different aspirations, but you're solid and you're grounded in what you're doing. Not only that, but you're good at what you're doing. So, I mean, there's no telling when you train at this for a year, you come in next year, you're ready to roll.
Yeah.
You could be one of the best stoppers there are there. So I look forward to it, man. I look forward to your athletic career and seeing where you end up. I hope you make it to XFL/USFL team.
Yeah, me too.
Great experience. But either way, dude, keep in touch. I mean, don't hesitate. If you need something, reach out. Okay. If I can help, I will.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the Gridiron crew. I want to say, while I got you on, appreciate them. Special thanks to them for getting you on. I'm familiar with them. Colin with the Gridiron crew. Great guy. Kind of saw what I was doing. Yeah, he saw that I'm here for the players, really, more or less. And so they give me the opportunity to interview you guys, and it goes great, man. I love getting to know each and every one of you, and good luck in your future, brother. And whatever you end up doing, I mean, do it well. I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Before we hop off, is there anything you want to say? Can the people find you any certain place? Facebook, Twitter, YouTube?
Yeah. So, I mean, just go ahead, look anywhere you want to find me. I likely have an account on, I have Facebook, obviously Twitter. You can probably find me on YouTube as well. You can find my highlights there. If you just want to kind of look me up SlamBall related, just my name, Nathan Karsjens, and SlamBall. I'm sure you'll find a link to all my stats. And, I think you posted like the app, you'll be able to find all my stuff for that as well. But no, yeah, big shout out to the Gridiron crew, obviously for SlamBall as well, giving me this opportunity. I think not only was SlamBall a really good experience for me, but I feel like if SlamBall didn't happen, I don't feel like I would have as much confidence or momentum to kind of continue my athletic journey, especially with them bringing me in and me doing really well and them being like, yeah, we want you back next year. That just kind of, again, it proved to me that, I have what it takes to do something in athletics, and I have the ability to do it professionally really well. I don't think I knew that I'd be a professional SlamBall player and that would be my first league as a professional athlete or my first experience as a professional athlete. I had no idea. Definitely didn't think that was how it was going to be, but if because of SlamBall, I can either get back into the professional football league or play football again, that would be awesome. And then obviously I think we talked about like my mom and my other family, but I really appreciate my family. They're very supportive. It would never, it never was, or it always wasn't such a great experience. Like I kind of said, things were always very last minute. And so because of that, I was very stressed because I was like, things aren't going very well, but then all of a sudden they went really well. And they, I have a really good support system with both my parents. Obviously my girlfriend, she came out and with her family to come to Vegas, which is like, again, like I did it very last minute, they made those plans very last minute as well. And so very appreciative of my support group, my extended family, both on my mom and dad's side. I have a ginormous family. And so, borderline hundreds of cousins,
Wow.
10 to 20 aunts, combined on both sides. Like I have a lot of support to draw from, and I'm very encouraged because of them. And so I feel like that's, and just, how I was brought up and just my entire background has just been, I'm very appreciative of my family and kind of how I was raised and all that kind of stuff. So big shout out to them as well. I know some of them are probably still watching, but I'm very appreciative of just having, like you said, that, that baseline of who I am is because of them. I didn't just teach myself how to do everything. I definitely it was instilled in me from a young age. And so I'm very appreciative to them as well.
Stay humble, my friend.
Yes, sir.
It's a good way to be. And
oh yeah,
I'm sure that they're going to keep repping you no matter what you do, even if you play golf or something. They're still going to have your back, bro.
Oh yeah.
That makes the biggest difference, though. And as soon as you told me my parents were coaches and I was raised an athlete, I already knew any kid you meet along those lines, typically they may not be the best athlete, but they have a lot of athleticism. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
They got a lot. You've
got
both.
Sure.
I mean, so
yeah,
it's super good. You honed in on them skills, man. And like I said, much respect. Keep in touch. We'll see you again soon, brother.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
Thank you again, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. It was a good conversation.
I agree. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'll see you.
Nathan Karsjens, great guy, y'all. Check him out. His Twitter isn't too big, but I'm sure we can get him a few follows. So follow him. I'll share everything in the show notes or details when I post. So everything should be there. Oh, it's been a good interview. Appreciate him coming on. SlamBall is a really awesome sport. It's exciting, and it's another alt sport that we really don't give the limelight. It came and went really fast, but once you start watching highlights and seeing clips, you realize what that game entails, and it's a lot more than just jumping on a trampoline with a ball. So much respect, Nathan. Appreciate you again coming on. Before I hop off, I got to say all my thank yous to everybody. Thanks to the Gridiron crew. I appreciate the interview opportunity. Great guy. Nathan was a good interview. I mean, it's one of the best I've had, so thank you. And also, thanks to SlamBall. We had some of their highlights and clips going. We were in contact with them, so we shouldn't get any copyright hits on that. I was kind of scared at first, so appreciate you, SlamBall. If you got any more opportunities come next year, let me know. We'll cover if the media opportunity is worth it, so just let me know. I want to thank XFL Board. Appreciate you, XFL Board, as always. And the XFL, I appreciate you greatly before you become whatever you become. As we said many times, the show is going to be changing too. It's going to be evolving. Things are going to change. It's probably going to change fast, so just be ready. The enjoyment here comes from much more than just covering one sports league on my end. I'm digging it. And in terms of like SlamBall, it's not a sport that I love or like necessarily, but I have respect for those players and know that their ambition shines through their gameplay. So check for that expansion, check for different stuff on our end. I don't know when it'll be exactly. I'm kind of trying to wait until the new name is released, whenever that shall be. Hopefully it'll be soon. As I've said in past shows, it's business as usual for us. We're not going to hit on the merger every episode. We may talk about it, we may discuss it, but it's not something that I'm going to spend all my time and waking minute on every single rumor that hits Twitter or Facebook. So check for more interviews, check for more guest spots, check for more experts coming on. I mean, this is what the show provides. So appreciate everybody listening. Been a good run. Hope to continue it as we go in the future. And that's it for me, guys. Till next time.